8:07 on WMAL, and a good Monday morning to you. It's Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson.
Hello, everybody.
So, Mitt Romney, we had the big story of the Washington Post last week about his days at the Cranbrook Institute with the manicured lawns and the scissors that he used to cut someone's hair.
Not a manicured cut, one would guess.
I did tell my wife this weekend I'm going to go Romney our kids.
Oh, really?
I need to go.
You're going to tackle them?
No, give them a haircut.
Tackle them, hold them down, and cut their hair? Is that what you're going to do?
May have to.
And then we'll have to write a 5,400-word article about it.
Matt Lewis joins us now from the Daily Caller, senior contributor there, also editor of the book, The Quotable Rogue, covers political news and the media. Good morning, Matt. How are you? Good to talk to you again.
Good morning. Doing terrific.
So I know you were critical, and you found some holes in the Washington Post story on that Romney expose on his high school experience. If you were editor of the Washington Post, would you have let that story go?
I think I would have probably run it. I don't know that it warranted the length. I don't think there was that much information there. But I don't, and the Washington Post clearly made some mistakes, and they had to issue a couple corrections, or at least the one thing that I pointed out, they had to have an editor's note. But basically, I think the story's fine. I mean, yeah, is it possible that 50 years ago a young Mitt Romney did some stupid things in prep school? I think that's, if someone came to me and had some ex-classmates, I would have probably written it. I think the real outrage is that this has become a big story. The fact that the Washington Post prints it's one thing. The fact that we spend the next week talking about it and cable news pushing it and sort of making it out that Mitt Romney is this evil character, whether this happened or not, is absurd, and it sort of is what bothers me about politics.
Well, I thought, and I said this last week, that I don't mind the story of being out there that, hey, he was a practical joker and may have actually cut this kid's hair because he didn't like him, as part of a story about Mitt Romney's life or how he grew up. If you did a 5,000-word piece on Mitt Romney and his entire existence, and you had that as a paragraph or as part of that story, that'd be fine. But to put all of that attention on just his hijinks in high school, I thought it had a purpose. We'll just put it that way.
Right. Well, I mean, there's so much context to this, right? So, I mean, first of all, it happened 50 years ago. Second of all, this story just happens to come out the day after President Obama announced his support for gay marriage. And it just happens to portray Mitt Romney as being a potential gay basher. There's certainly that tone to it. And so there's just so much. And the other thing, I think a lot of people are just upset, not about the story, but about juxtapose this to the way Barack Obama has been treated by the media in such, glowing fashion. And aside from the fact that probably they haven't, did the Washington Post do this thorough a job vetting Barack Obama? I mean, Mitt Romney's been a governor. He ran for president 4 years ago. He's been through a pretty vicious primary cycle. They're doing a lot of deep diving at this point to come up with controversy.
I read the comments from Britt Hume, who said, these kinds of stories are interesting if there is a connection between the behavior you saw back in the day and the man that you see now. He said what he found lacking about the story, I sort of agree with him, is that there was nothing about that incident, which he called hazing, that sort of relates to something going on today with Mitt Romney. I mean, we don't think of him as a bully today.
I agree. I mean, I do think that, and there have been some people who have tried to connect the dots and to say he's a mean campaigner, he goes negative, and that all stems back to him being a bully. I mean, I think that's an incredible stretch. I mean, politics is a tough business, but pretty much everybody kind of agrees that Mitt Romney's a nice guy, even if you don't like him, even if you think he's a tough campaigner and his team, in the primaries beat up Newt Gingrich. We know that. Most people think, well, Mitt Romney, though, is a nice guy, and Romney is a nice person. And there is, in the end of the Washington Post story, there is the implication that Ann Romney turned his life around, that upon meeting her, that was the redemptive experience. I mean, who knows if that's true or not, but I mean, you're right. These sort of things really hurt when they confirm a pre-existing narrative, but most people think Mitt Romney's a pretty good guy.
Yeah. Newsweek has the picture of the president on the cover this week with a halo in rainbow, the symbol for gays, and it says the first gay president. And I was thinking, well, if that's the case, then why didn't Newsweek have an article or a magazine cover with Vice President Cheney in 2004 when he pretty much came out and said the same thing that Barack Obama did the other day and say the first gay vice president? Because there really aren't any differences in their point of view. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're right. The only difference is that Dick Cheney was first, I think.
Yeah.
I think there's so many issues here. I mean, first of all, these news weeklies, these magazines are clearly struggling. I mean, we saw last week the picture of a woman on the cover breastfeeding a 3-year-old, and now we have this cover of another popular weekly. So clearly they're attempting to sort of gin up controversy and have interesting cover stories. This one, I think, obviously it sort of harkens back to Bill Clinton being called the first black president.
Right.
But I think this probably does more harm than good for Barack Obama. I mean, I really do. Clearly, there are a lot of folks who are excited and saw this as an historic moment. But I also think a lot of the folks that Barack Obama needs to win in places like Ohio and North Carolina, might be turned off by this. And not so much by his interview as by the dancing in the end zone. And so the more that they sort of play this up, it's not the position itself, it's sort of all the other stuff that comes along with it, with the Andrew Sullivan article.
Have you seen the stories about this Edward Klein book that's coming out on Obama that says that Reverend Wright was offered by a friend of Barack's through an intermediary a $150 bribe to basically not preach during the 2008 campaign?
I did see that, and I mean, a couple things. First, this is how you do a book. I mean, you want to sort of leak these things out, and I just wonder how many more of these revelations are going to end up on the Drudge Report in the coming days and weeks. But it doesn't surprise me. I mean, let's just assume for a second that it's true. It's probably smart. I mean, the allegation is not that the Obama campaign directly. It was that some sort of a supporter. And I think they would have been stupid not to try to shut up Reverend Wright. I mean, the guy clearly was causing them problems. And, there's a question of, how do you do it? What's legal? What's ethical? But, Reverend Wright could have sunk that campaign.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much. Good to have you on the show as always.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Matt Lewis with the Daily Caller.